because you're just waiting for it.
And it's like laughing maniacally, too.
Yeah. But then Robbie demolishes it.
Yeah, he's like ripping the guts out of it.
He's like, I hate you, I hate you.
And that's when the closet starts opening up again.
Carol Ann is just like... And then you have that great... the great effects and the lighting of the door with this kind of... These tentacle things come out, you know? It looks pretty rad.
Yeah, and Diane tries to get in, and there's this beast thing that's on the door that's blocking the door, like roaring at her, and she's yelling, stay away from my kids. And then it kind of like shocks her and kind of throws her down the hall, and she gets shocked again and ends up falling down the stairs.
That's a huge staircase to fall down.
And it's a almost a spiral. It's like a half spiral staircase too. So she goes down, and then she goes outside to try to get some help, or to try to get in through the room from the outside. And then that's when she ends up falling into the pool.
Yeah, she takes a misstep. Obviously, it's slippery.
It's muddy because of all the rain now. It's just kind of very easy to have the mudslide, and she ends up falling into the pool because of that. And then that's when the bodies start popping up.
And it's a callback to the beginning of the film, where Diane talks about how she's scared because Carol Ann sleepwalks. Mm-hmm. What if she takes, she ends up going back and falls into the pool before there's any water in it.
And even when she's missing in the very beginning, when they realize she's missing, Steve
jumps in thinking that she's fallen in to look around.
When they look for her and can't find her, he thinks they think that she might have fallen in there, so he dives in and is searching for her. So yeah, she falls into the pool. The bodies are coming up. The skeletons that we talked about are supposedly real skeletons. And then you can see like coffins kind of bobbing up.
And the doors opening, it's crazy. And then she gets out, so she's able to work her way out, but because it's so slippery, it's just straight mud. A ditch. She falls all the way back down and is completely helpless and just falls right back down in the water with even more of these skeletons emerging from the water.
And then it's ultimately the neighbors that are able to pull her out. But when she says, "Hey, help me save my kids," they're being threatened. Like, they almost don't believe her.
They don't.
They're very reluctant to help.
It seems like the wife doesn't want her husband to go. She's just like, "What kind of sounds are that?" Like, completely like, you're on your own at this point. So then Diane runs back in, right?
She runs back in, and there's that great effect where it does the simultaneous zoom and dolly shot down the hallway, the stretch shot that like Spielberg and Spike Lee and even Scorsese have used a lot. There's that the hallway looks like it's 10 miles long, and she starts running down the hallway, and she looks like she had hurt her ankle or something falling in the pool, because she's kind of doing a limp as she's running down the hallway to get into the room, which the beast isn't there anymore. She manages to open the door, but now the closet is kind of turned into a big gaping mouth that's ready to suck both Robbie and Carol Ann into it. And like I said, JoBeth Williams is fantastic in this movie, and especially in the climax. And it's all her, because Craig T. Nelson is gone for the most part. But she manages to open the door and manages to grab the kids, or reaches out, has Robbie grab her hand, and she tells Robbie to grab Carol Ann. They're all going to hold each other. They're all going to get out together. She's able to save, both of her children. Well, 2 of the 3 children, because Dana is not there. But that's when Steve comes home, and like all hell is breaking loose. Even like the whole neighborhood is now like chaotic. Speaking of the chaotic neighborhood. Because now, like, the effect of all the lights in the house kind of flickering on and off. Steve pulls up. The whole neighborhood is out there wondering what the hell's going on. And it's almost like their house is now kind of the center of everything, but because you realize that the neighborhood itself has been built on top of an old cemetery, and with the bodies in the pool, you now realize that they did not move the bodies. They just moved the headstones, and that's a scene and a line that you and I were both laughing at yesterday, because Craig T. Nelson has that confrontation with Mr. Teague out in front of the house.
You son of a bitch.
And he's yelling at him. It's you only moved the headstones. You didn't move the bodies. You just moved the headstones and you left the bodies. And he yells at him, and then like Mr. Teague is like really scared now because he realizes what's happening. It's almost like he's traumatized.
When Steve, he's like losing, he's like, why? Why? And then, yeah, Mr. T, you could tell he knows that he fucked up.
Yeah.
Because even when the house, like, kind of collapses in on itself.
That's an awesome effect. That effect is so amazing.
Yeah, I don't...
The implosion of the house. But yeah, he's like really frightened. He's watching it happen, and he's really frightened.
I think even when the family leave, when the Freelings leave, he's still there, and he's like on his knees, like beside himself. He doesn't know how to feel.
Yeah, he can't process what's happening right now. It's just it's so traumatizing and scary.
And it's like you said, that whole thing is his fault, essentially.
There's when Steve gets there and Diane and Caroline and Robbie all come running out of the house, they get into the car and they're all screaming and yelling like, we need to leave now, let's go, let's go, let's go. And there's that funny little bit where he can't find the keys. He's like searching his pockets for the keys, and he finds them and they pull out, and then and Dana comes home from the date, and she's really frightened and scared, and she's screaming, you know, like, what's happening, what's happening? And then they pull up to her and tell her, you know, get in the car. It's really intense. That climax is fantastic. And then they drive off, but as they drive off, you can see like the whole neighborhood is just going to shit. There's like fires and explosions, and the fire hydrants have exploded and they're all shooting up water. That's one of the few things I like about the second one is they return to the neighborhood and it's like a ghost town. There's like all the houses are up for sale. You know, no one stayed after realizing what was going on there. But they leave, and then the neighbors and Mr. Teague are out on the street kind of watching the house, and then it starts imploding or kind of folding in on itself, which is, like I said, is such an amazing effect. So much so that I think that's in the first Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. It's kind of a knockout, like a Poltergeist Amityville Horror.
I just watched that the other day. Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's like gets so annoyed with them that it like kicks them out and then just like destroys itself. But yeah, there's that. It folds and kind of like almost gets sucked into a black hole, basically, and then there's like that kind of lens flare just as it finishes off. Kind of reminiscent of Back to the Future, a little bit.
And then they manage to escape and they go to the Holiday Inn, and they're just so beat and tired and the whole experience. And then there's that funny little sequence where he's searching for the keys for the hotel room again, and Robbie manages to hand him the keys. And then at the very end they kick out the TV because that was the catalyst for all the traumatizing shit that they just went through for the last 2 hours. Or however many weeks the time frame of the film is. It's so good. That movie, it's awesome, but that climax is amazing. Like we mentioned before, it gets released June 4th, 1982. The following week, on June 11th, E.T. gets released. So, I know that a lot of the trade papers at the time were kind of declaring 82 the summer of Spielberg because, you know, E.T. was his film, and for all intents and purposes, Poltergeist is his film as well. So much so, I was telling you earlier, I have that Spielberg book that I got that's so old and out of date because I bought it back in high school. I think the last movie that's in it is Schindler's List. But for a book that's on Steven Spielberg films, Poltergeist is one of those films. So it's got enough of his stamp on it that it's still considered his, as opposed to just a movie that he happened to produce.
It would, to me, it feels like a kind of like how Tarantino still considers True Romance like partially his film, even though he didn't direct it. It seems like that kind of like scenario happening, because I don't know if you knew, but the Tarantino box set, I think it doesn't include Natural Born Killers. It's True Romance is the only one that's included in there that he didn't write and direct.
Yeah.
So.
And mentioning Natural Born Killers, I know that he wasn't happy with how Oliver Stone had kind of messed with his script. I don't know, is the actual script or the screenplay credit on Natural Born Killers, is it even Tarantino, or is it story by Tarantino and then the script is rewritten?
I would have to go back and check, but I thought that he had requested his name be taken off of like everything to do with the film. And I don't know if they've since like he's found a new appreciation for it or whatnot, you know what I mean? That's a good question though. We should look into that.
Yeah, because I know that he wasn't happy with the changes that were made and what Oliver Stone did with it, but I'm curious in that opening credit sequence if he's credited on screenplay or just the story.
Speaking of that, in the history of horror, Stephen King came out and they asked him again about the Kubrick's The Shining, and he kind of switched up his story, and he was like, you know, I really don't like, I just really didn't like the way that he changed the ending, because it's like, in the book, it's kind of like this, the dad kind of redeems himself in a way.
He saves the day, or, manages to sacrifice himself, and then the place explodes because of the boiler.
And then, obviously Kubrick's film plays out a little differently. And so he said, that's why I initially didn't like it, but it's a beautifully shot film, and it's so amazing, and the score is so amazing. So, I don't know.
Maybe it's grown on him with age, or maybe that's just a political thing to do, because he knows for a fact that The Shining is kind of beloved as a horror classic. Whether or not it follows the Stephen King story beat for beat. That's something else that we've mentioned before, where the movie is fantastic, the book is very good too. They can stand alone on their own.
It's interesting too that Dr. Sleep is kind of honoring Kubrick's vision and the book. Certain things are mentioned in there.
Basically the end of Dr. Sleep, the movie, is how The Shining, the book, is supposed to end. With the boiler going off, and instead of Jack, it was Danny this time staying behind to ensure that the girl was safe and that she was able to get out of there.
Spoiler alert. But yeah, what else? What else about Poltergeist, man?
Well, it ends up earning $76.6 million in the U.S., 121 worldwide, as you mentioned at the top of the show. It's the highest grossing horror film of that year. That was a year where there was a lot of horror films.
I think, and then eighth overall.
Obviously, the highest grossing film of the year is E.T., which made about $359.1 million, and which is crazy because the movie that was number 2 on the list didn't even make half of what E.T. made.
What was that one?
Tootsie is number 2. The movies that come before Poltergeist for the year are E.T., Tootsie, An Officer and a Gentleman, Rocky III, Porky's, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and then 48 Hours. So that's a pretty